Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Giving folks a minute to get in here. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming today. Welcome to our live Q&A. My name is Jen England. I'm with Food Rescue Hero, and today we're going to answer all your questions about food rescue, food recovery, how to start it, how to do it, how to grow it, anything you want to know. So just to quick lay some definitions out there. Food recovery, probably most people on this call know, but just to make sure, food recovery really is the equivalent most times of immediate delivery. You have your rescuers picking up food from your retailers, from events, from institutions, and they're taking it directly to nonprofit distribution partners, as well as direct distribution sites like housing authorities, senior high rises, Head Start programs, community medical facilities, and things like that. Food Recovery Hero is a network of food rescue organizations that have together rescued over 100 million pounds of fresh food. This gives us some great window into what works and what doesn't work. I like to tell people I've made all the mistakes, so I can tell you what not to do when it comes to food rescue. But what we found is that food recovery increases food access. It immediately provides food to people who need it. We're able to end food insecurity with our housing authority partners. We're able to provide additional nutritional options, culturally appropriate foods. We provide nutrition security. So it's a real bonus for people who receive food. It also decreases food waste. This is millions of pounds of greenhouse gases mitigated, which is incredibly important now as the climate crisis is really amping up. And of course, we're able to enhance hunger relief programs with fresh and nutritious food. We really believe that we have a greater impact together when we all work on food recovery and we share ideas and best practices. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. We'd love you to drop your questions into the Q&A below, and we'll answer your questions live right now. I know that every time we do a webinar, we end up with more questions than we can handle in the given time period. So this is your opportunity to just ask away. And I will let you know that we have dropped into the chat a guide to starting a food rescue. So for those of you that are on here and don't want to ask a particular question, maybe don't have anything super specific, but are looking to hear more, tell me what areas you're interested in and where you're maybe having some challenges. Is it recruiting food donors? Is it getting volunteers? Is it convincing non-traditional recipients to be able to distribute food? What are your challenges when it comes to food recovery? Oh, I am. I know that one thing we hear often is questions about donors. This has been a really critical area for our food recovery partners across the country. We all run into the issue where food donors say, well, we're not allowed to. And of course, we all know about the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act. So with that, I want to, all right, I see a great question in there. Let's start with that. Amrita asks, convince people to donate excess food, especially at the supermarkets. So first things first, they'll always say, we don't have any food or we're not allowed to donate. The Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act is the go-to sort of resource for being allowed to donate food. The Food Donation Improvement Act is actually right before Congress right now, and it will expand that liability coverage, protection for donors. So there's a lot of, momentum behind ensuring that donors will donate. Another thing that we often hear is we don't have anything to donate. I'd say the number one tactic we use with donors when they say they don't want to work with us or they're nervous is to work through all of their objections, is to not take no for an answer. So if they say they don't have any food to donate, ask them what they're throwing away, what they think they can donate, what they are donating. Most donors think that the only things that they can donate would be non-perishables and bread, maybe frozen meat. They're not aware they can donate produce, dairy. They can donate dairy at its sell-by date. And they don't know that. They're throwing it away. So kind of work through with them what they're already donating. Are they donating every day? What are they throwing away? Every single grocer is throwing food away. I think we all know that. So kind of working through that with them to get them to understand that food recovery isn't limited to just shelf-stable items and bread. Also helping them to understand that you can work with other programs that are already receiving. So let's say they're already donating to a food pantry 2 days a week. That doesn't mean that they can't donate the other 5 days a week to you. So kind of like whittling away at their objections one by one. There's some really common ones, some of the ones I just mentioned, but there are also donors come up with unique reasons they can't donate. And most of those are you can overcome. Jake, do you want to tell me what the questions are?
Like the next one is, so I'm not sure if you answered how to make sure food is safe, or to ensure food safety.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things. First of all, the food that's being donated has to be safe. So we only take food from licensed food producers. So we would not take food from somebody's home kitchen, for example. Those food producers have to uphold standards for food they sell. And you let them know that they need to uphold those same food safety standards for food that's being donated. You need to make sure that they're holding it safely. So if they are donating TCS food, temperature controlled for time and temperature controlled for safety food, they're not leaving it out in their refrigerated storeroom waiting for your volunteers to pick it up. In terms of the volunteers, so we use technology to make sure that the trip is short, to make sure that we're watching and that the volunteers are picking it up and going directly to the drop-off. And we actually can show that by looking at our data, that our rescues are on average less than half an hour. But even without that data, you can build that process into your rescues. Don't send anything that's time and temperature controlled for safety more than a few miles away. Don't send it to somebody that isn't prepared to handle food safely. So we work with a lot of places that don't have somebody that's food ServSafe certified. We don't send them TCS food. We send them whole produce and bread and things like that. So really looking at your process every step of the way and making sure that food safety is integrated into your standard operating procedures.
We have a question. Which individual at whichever establishment, whether donor or nonprofit, do we target? Which title person do we have the best success targeting as a contact person?
This was nonprofit?
It's generic, general.
Okay, so for donors, it's going to vary depending on the donor, right? You're going to look for somebody that, number one, can give you the yes, right? Number two, somebody that has stakes in the game. So at a large retail chain, right, that might be the sustainability officer, because they are looking to get their sustainability numbers up and they can work to get you the yes in that chain. At a small mom and pop grocery store, it might be the owners, right? And then you might want to use the reduced waste haulage at cost as an incentive, as well as the tax incentives. For nonprofit partners, it's going to have to be somebody that's readily available, that can answer your call to let them know that you've got food to donate, and can give you that yes. But it's also going to be, it should be somebody, again, that has stakes in the game, somebody that cares about the program. I think the best thing you can do is, no matter what partner you're working with, find somebody that's passionate about this, right? That wants to get food to the people they work with, that wants to keep the food that they're producing out of the dumpster. If you find a champion within the organization, no matter what end of the spectrum they're on, they will help you open the doors you need to open. Sometimes it doesn't even have to be the person that can give you the yes. It's the person that is passionate enough to work their way through their system, their bureaucracy, to get you what you need. And to find that person, sometimes it just takes a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails.
We have another question. Why is so much food at a grocery store just getting thrown away instead of those stores donating them to places that need the food?
That's a really great question. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. At a large chain grocery store, or retail chain, the staff may not feel empowered to make that decision. They may feel like there is some prohibition from above that they cannot donate that food for one reason or another. Whether it's real or not, that is oftentimes what they're thinking. The second thing is time. I think we all know that we are in the middle of a very strange time, and everywhere is understaffed. And for a grocery store to have the time to cull food and get it to be donated, they may feel like they don't have the time to do that. That's why when you're working with the donor, you have to make it super easy, a very low lift on their part. With our grocery stores, it is almost no difference between donating and throwing away. They simply, as they're pulling produce off the shelf, they're putting into 2 different boxes: throw away, donate, throw away, donate. Most of it goes into the donate. Only a few things are going to go into the throwaway box. And then it's just set into the cooler instead of dumped into the garbage. The volunteers come in and do the rest of the work. And so you're really minimizing the amount of time it takes for your donor to have to take to make the process work.
And I just want to add to that, some donors just have never thought about this before, and they've simply just never been asked. So that's it's a very low hanging fruit, no pun intended, to just ask a donor. We'll move on to some of the other questions. That's okay. There's a bunch, so I just want to keep it moving. Mm-hmm. With restaurants specifically, how can you tell when a donation is worth our time? For example, one example of mashed potatoes.
Yes, just plain old mashed potatoes, right? Potatoes. I mean, that's a difficult question to answer because it depends. It depends on who your volunteers are. It depends on who your nonprofit partners are. It depends on the bandwidth of your organization. So, for example, a pan of mashed potatoes from a restaurant, we have a couple of shelters that love to get that sort of thing, and it really rounds out their meals, and they don't have to spend time, money, or resources, making that pan. We also get other items from some of our restaurants that are real treats for some of the shelters that we work with, or some of the places that we work with. And we can often manage it with our volunteer pool, but there are certainly times when we're struggling. We've got, an extra 6,000 pounds of produce to distribute that day using volunteers. That pan of mashed potatoes is not high on our list. And so the question then becomes, is that restaurant regularly donating stuff that you can use or that your partners want and that you have the bandwidth to get? If they are, then the day that it's not great, that's okay, right? If it's regularly stuff that is tough for you to find somebody that wants it, doesn't necessarily seem worth it for all of your time, you can think about troubleshooting that by asking the restaurant to drive it to the nonprofit themselves. If it doesn't take any of your resources to do, then it makes it a lot more feasible to accept those sort of small donations.
And I also want to add that the answer doesn't always have to be throwing that pan of mashed potatoes away.
Right.
It could be saving it until tomorrow, until the donor has more to donate, or until your organization has more capacity to pick up that donation. Now, of course, that could mean, if it's a highly perishable item, leaving it and it being, disposed of. But there are other alternatives.
Yeah.
Moving on. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say that our sort of like strategy of last resort is asking them to deliver it themselves somewhere. That they will often, if they really don't want to throw it away, they're willing to take it somewhere, and that just makes it easy to do.
But the nonprofit may be willing to pick it up themselves too.
Yeah.
How can we incentivize restaurants, vendors, caterers, et cetera, donors? What is their why to donate, or why do they donate?
Yeah.
I know the tax write-off may not be a good enough reason. So how can I market it to them?
Absolutely. There's a lot of whys. So tax write-off, especially for things like caterers or smaller restaurants, might not be enough to make it worth it. But waste haul costs, especially for a caterer, they could be significant. If they're paying to have their garbage picked up, that can actually be a significant cost. So they can save money that way. Public pressure, public persona, public perception. It is becoming less and less okay for businesses to throw away food. They get the advantage of being able to say, we are sustainable and we're helping to end hunger. We donate food. We do a lot of shout outs to our donors. We provide window stickers for our restaurants. You can provide table tents for caterers, for events, for things like that. It can be a very, very good publicity and PR for a donor to donate. Also sustainability, community goodwill. There's a lot of reasons in there. That what I usually do is, if I'm talking to a donor, is I kind of talk through the various reasons why they might want to donate, what the benefits are, and kind of look for where their eyes light up, and then try to elaborate on that. All of them are valid, but there's going to be one that kind of really resonates with your potential partner there. And if you can get to that, you can elaborate on what that looks like. So again, if it's like publicity and PR, if it's a business, if it's a caterer, for example, they can advertise themselves as a sustainable catering venue, for people that want to do a green wedding or whatever it is like that. So again, just kind of looking for what it is that is hitting their interest, and then helping them imagine what that looks like in action.
We've got 3 questions that I think can be kind of rapid fire ask and response, because I know we touched on some of them earlier. Is safety or liability a common excuse for donors not to donate?
It is, and they can be overcome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Very rapid. As we talked about, the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act is one of those tools to overcome those. We've got, let's see. Do you ever get feedback or complaints from volunteers when donations are small, saying that it's, quote, not worth it?
Occasionally, generally not so much. So here's the line I say is that there's a recipient for every donation, right? And you want to match your donations where they're going to have an impact. So let's say it's 6 sandwiches. That seems like not that much and a waste of time. And maybe it's not keeping that much out of the landfill. But we have a drop-in center for homeless youth here, for people under 22. They serve half a dozen to a dozen people a day. Those 6 sandwiches make a huge impact at that location. So those smaller donations actually matter if you get them to the right place. Now, I also would not really want to go pick up, 1 tub of yogurt and a sandwich. That would seem pretty small. But again, like Jake said earlier, we work with our donors to try to get at least a half a dozen servings out of a donation. I will say that the food improvement Food Donation Improvement Act will allow donors to give food directly to people in need without liability concerns. So if they have one sandwich, they can give it to, say, a homeless person on the street, and they do not face liability, and there won't be those concerns.
Thank you. Do nonprofit partners care if the food, if it's food that is recovered or donated? So I think they're asking, do nonprofit partners care that it's donated food?
Well, there may be some concern or perception at the beginning that what they're getting is garbage, right? That it's like wasted food. That's actually a terrible term, right? We're recovering wasted food, because it sounds like you're picking out of the garbage. But once they see the food, no, they're thrilled with the quality. And we do a lot of work and educating with our nonprofit partners to help them understand why food might go to waste, that it's not a quality issue, it's a quantity issue. And
the donors too, Jen, to not donate food that's inedible.
Right.
I think that's part of it. And when nonprofits receive food that it looks to them unedible or spoiled, to please let us know, because this should be done with a great degree of dignity. And that if there is food that's inedible or looks to be inedible, that it's our job to work with the donors to say, hey, that's not what this is about.
Right. That's exactly right. And that is something you also have to do. So you work with them to help them understand what it should be, and then also what it should not be, and make sure that they're not afraid to tell you that they're getting bad donations. We have had situations where a donor just didn't understand, or there was a new staff member, or something else in the process was broken, and they were sending boxes that were just terrible. And the nonprofit partner was afraid to tell us, and we actually ended up with some really hurt feelings or bad blood, people thinking that we thought that they weren't worth, good food because it was donated. And we worked really hard to correct that, so that they understood that that was not acceptable. They needed to call us as soon as they saw that, so we could address it with the donor, because it is not acceptable to send garbage to people just because they are food insecure.
Yeah. Food justice doesn't just mean providing any food. It's good, healthy, edible food. We have a question from Emily Grant. Is food rescue working or happening in Florida? If so, how can we partner? Continues to say transportation is our biggest challenge for smaller run food rescue organizations. Any suggestions? Boy, do we have a solution for you.
So yeah, that is the entire point of the Food Rescue Hero platform, to be honest. That's why we developed it. We developed it in a working food rescue organization, 412 Food Rescue. You see our logo up there. And we developed it because we were having the same issue. I helped start 412 Food Rescue in 2015. We were entirely, I call it analog, but we were using Facebook and text and all of those other things to move our volunteers for the first 2 years. And it was very hard to grow that way. So we developed an app to help us recruit and schedule donors. And so that was the first version of the Food Rescue Hero app. It worked very much like Uber, where you would put in a rescue and it would send a notification to your volunteers. If they were available, they would accept it and go do the rescue. Since that time, we've iterated on it many, many times and made it a lot better, and added a lot of bells and whistles and things like find a sub, weekly rescues, all of those things. But at its heart, it is to solve that problem of how do you scale food rescue using volunteers? How are you able to move? We do about 100, 150 rescues a day. And our missed rescue rate is around 1%. So that means about 1% of our rescues do not get claimed by a volunteer. So that's 1.5 per day. So that means we're moving, up to 149, 48, let's say 148, round up to 2%, even though that's not quite right, or 1.5%. Sorry, I started thinking math, and that just
I'll save you by asking the next question, Jen. I just read on you're welcome. I just read on Twitter that people think rescuing food from a dumpster is food rescue. Is that a good idea? If not, how can individuals get involved?
That is That is not, no, that's not food rescue. Food rescue is working with the donors to not throw it away in the first place. Rescuing from a dumpster is dumpster diving. A solid tradition, no shade on dumpster diving. Certainly have known plenty of friends that were dumpster divers, but it shouldn't get to that. If you put food in a dumpster, the potential for contamination, for spoilage is really high. It is not effective or safe way to get food that's going to be wasted to people who need it. Food rescue is the answer to dumpster diving. Food rescue is working with those donors to hold that food at a safe temperature for not even a day, until somebody comes and picks it up and gets it where it's going.
Yeah, that's really more of a personal decision where our food rescue system is a system designed to save food before it gets to that point. I think I saw another question here. Robert asked, can you mention some national chains that are donating so we could contact local branches? For example, Florida Publix, Darden Restaurants, etc.
Yep, Darden is donating. So is Trader Joe's, Whole Foods, Pizza Hut. Who else is in the FDC universe? Jake, I'm blanking. Starbucks.
Yum Brands. I don't know. That might be totally incorrect. Is KFC?
KFC. Yep.
Is that Yum Brands? I cannot remember.
Yes, Yum Brands. Yum. Yes.
Yeah. And I know we only have a few minutes left, so there are a couple links that, Jen, do you want to introduce those links? The Calendly link.
Sure. I'm not sure what link you're dropping in. Okay, so we're dropping some links into the chat because we are just about out of time. There is a link for a Calendly, my Calendly, that is to set up a half an hour meeting with me if you're interested in talking more about Food Rescue or Food Rescue Hero. The Get Started guide is at the beginning of the chat. If you missed it, it's also on our website, along with other videos, webinars that we've done that go more into detail about, I'd copy them and paste them into something. Robert would be my guest. What was I saying?
Yeah,
Sorry, my brain is scattered this afternoon. I apologize, folks. There are videos on our website that include things like donors and working with donors and nonprofit partners. And then finally, there is a listening session that we are holding for the White House conference on, I think it's nutrition or something like that. And that listening session, there's a link for those up above, as well as a link to our next webinar, which is about food donors, how to get past the no. And if you want to set up time for a few more questions, there's a Calendly link up there, or you can email me.
Type your email address in there.
Yep, that's our next webinar. And I think my email is on the, nope. And my email is jen@412foodrescue.org or jen@foodrescuehero.org. And if you've got specific questions, please feel free to email me so I can answer them for you. Really appreciate everybody's time today. And we look forward to seeing you at our White House listening sessions. I look forward to seeing you in my Calendly links and at our next webinar in August on how to get past the no, or getting past the no. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.